And when you talk about the themes, when I come over. Right.
Greetings and welcome. This is kind of Hafner Vineyard's summer session, Friday afternoon, and we're delighted that you're with us today on the first session that we have. I'm Scott Hafner, and hats off to Kate Hafner, who devised this curriculum. It's kind of like a summer camp focused on wines for today, next Friday, and the following Friday. And tonight or this afternoon, depending upon your time zone, we're taking a deep dive into Cabernet. And in just a few minutes, we'll put you through the paces. Parke and Sarah will put you through the paces and taste the 2007, 2012, and 2016 Cabernets. We're expecting about 80 or 90 patrons and their friends on the Zoom this afternoon. Now, if you haven't already started opening your wines, we encourage you to. Just a reminder that you are all muted, which means that you can make as much noise as you'd like without any fear of interrupting us. These are the wines that we're going to taste and the order in which we're going to taste them, oldest to youngest. Age has some privileges. Out here in the country, we have many blessings, but one of the challenges from time to time can be internet connectivity. So we just hope that everything works fine and there's no freezes, but we'll ask for your patience if there are some. You will notice at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat function and a Q&A function. And if you would like to ask us questions as we're going along, please use the Q&A function. It's always fascinating for us what people want to know more about. And in terms of the chat function, you're all here because you're Hafner Cabernet aficionados. So as you're tasting, if you'd like to share a memorable moment or a particular Cabernet vintage of ours that had resonance for you, please put that in the chat, and everybody who's participating will be able to see that. And who knows, there may be consensus about a particular vintage. We've started these Zoom tastings and presentations as a result of COVID, when we couldn't be with you personally here. And that's slowly changing, and we look forward to it continuing to change, and we look forward to you being back here, because there's nothing more enjoyable for us than being with you and sharing a glass of wine. So we look forward to that day. But in the meantime, we're tickled that we have patrons from far and near, including the founding partner, our father, who's watching this up at his house. So please be nice, because Parke and I are still on probation after 40 years. Give us a passing grade, please. I think a couple other points I want to make is what we're doing this afternoon is a vertical tasting, but you all have been doing vertical tastings of our Cabernets for years, which I can't tell you how honored we are by that. And particularly the time and effort that Parke and the cellar crew and the vineyard crew put in to growing grapes and making great wine, and then having you hold it for years is, I can't tell you how deeply complimented we are by that. And it's part of the joy of this business model is that we get to be in contact with you and hear about that. So we're very pleased to be doing a vertical tasting with you today. One caveat is that it is possible to hold wine too long. And one of the pleasures of being in close contact with you is people will call us and they'll say, oh, I've got a 2001 in my cellar. I've got a 2006. I've got a 1995. In fact, there's one patron who's watching today, a couple from Southern California, who are always interested in the oldest possible bottle of wine that we can find that's still available for sale. They're a delight. The patrons are a delight. The older wine is a delight too. But it is possible to hold on to wine too long. And I think if there's one thing that we've learned in the last year, it's that there are many causes for celebration, and procrastinating those celebrations isn't always the right thing to do. So if you have older vintages, find the special time, enjoy them with family and friends, and don't wait too long, because eventually a wine will go over the hill. And Parke and Sarah will talk more about that, and you'll have a sense as we taste these wines. A number of patrons let us know that they'll be tasting older vintages this afternoon along with us, 2004, 2005, including a 1998. And if you have gaps in your wine cellar that you'd like to fill of Hafner Cabernet, call or email me. Sometimes we do have older vintages that aren't on the website that we're not talking about, but that we can find for you. I got a little bit ahead of myself there, and Kate put up a slide about the Hafner Vineyard team, and I just want to show you, that there are many hands that make this wine, that grow these grapes and make this wine and get it to you. We were looking at this picture recently and very, very aware of the fact that this was taken in October 2019, when we were all able to be close to each other and no one had heard of COVID. We're grateful that things are opening up, and we're looking forward to taking a new photograph. But here you can see the vineyard and winery crew surrounding Dad there in the center foreground. 4 generations in this picture, from Dad to Marie on Kate's lap. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Parke and Sarah, who will put you through your paces with the 2007 and the 2012 and the 2016. Thank you.
Good afternoon, evening.
Hi.
So today's topic is Cabernet, and we're going to start with a few slides here, hopefully. There we go. This is a map that Sarah drew of our vineyard, and we circled the 2 blocks that we draw most of our Cabernet from for ourselves. As you may or may not know, we usually sell about half the grapes we grow and keep about half for ourselves. And our main block is the largest one you see there, called the Kellogg block, named after the previous owners. Just a little bit of history there, planted in, I believe, 2000. Just to tell you a little bit about how we make the wine. Harvest for us for the Cabernet usually occurs anywhere from, say, the end of September to the middle of October. And we decide to pick the grapes based on taste We, of course, test the sugar as we're going along, but taste is the ultimate determining factor. And once we pick the grapes with our machine harvester, you see there, we bring them into the winery immediately, and they go through what's referred to as a fruit sorter, which is a piece of equipment that removes any material other than grapes that wasn't previously sorted on the machine harvester. The machine has exactly the same sorter on board. So it gets a double sorting and takes out a few of the stems and petioles that we don't want in the fermenter. The grapes are then, the grapes and the juice are then pumped directly into fermenters, because the color is in the skins of a red grape, and to make a red wine, you have to ferment the juice with the skins. So once we've pumped the must, which is the technical term for the juice and the skins, into the fermenter, we'll add yeast to get fermentation started. One of the byproducts of fermentation is carbon dioxide gas, and as that gas bubbles up through the tank, it becomes trapped in the skins, causing the skins to float to the top of the tank, forming what's known as the cap. And obviously, if we didn't use some means to mix the skins and the fermenting juice, we wouldn't get the color and flavor extraction that we're looking for. So we do what are called pump overs. And you'll see me in the bottom left-hand corner there, or second from the left, where I'm drawing fermenting juice out of the fermentation tank and into a sump, and then we're pumping it back over the top, and we sprinkle the top of the cap with a stainless steel sprinkler that gently moistens the cap, and then that juice can percolate down through the skins. Fermentation lasts about 2 to 3 weeks, and then at that point we will drain the wine, the Cabernet or Malbec wine, out of the fermentation tank, and then to get the skins out of the tank, we pull them out with a hoe. And there's a photograph of Ricardo. I believe he's, the photographer was inside the tank taking a picture of him hoeing the skins out.
You were the photographer.
I guess that was me. And then that wine is, the skins are then shoveled into the press, where we extract a little bit of remaining wine that's in the skins, and then that wine is settled overnight. And then the next morning we rack or pump the clear wine off of the sediment and put it to barrels in the caves. And during the first few months of barrel aging, that wine will undergo a second fermentation called malolactic fermentation. It's a bacterial fermentation whereby the natural malic acid is converted to a softer lactic acid, making the wine a little softer on the palate and more microbiologically stable, which we care about. You probably don't. So the first wine that we're going to taste today is the 2007. Hopefully you've had a chance to pour this in your glass. And I'm going to turn this part of the presentation over to Sarah. Sarah's got the most keen palate in the group, so we always listen to what she says about the wines, and somewhat what I say about the wines as well.
We give you some credit.
That's right.
One thing to notice on our slides is we've put our percentages of Cabernet, Malbec, and Petit Verdot on these 3 wines and the harvest dates and everything, and it's very interesting how similar they are. So we try to make the wines to not be different from one another. We want it to be as similar as possible, with some differences in vintages. But for me, the 2007 is just lovely now. It's an excellent example of how our wines develop. And we talk about bottle bouquet, which seems a little esoteric, but if you compare the 07 with the 16, you'll notice that there's a difference, and that's bottle bouquet. So for me, I smell blackberries, violets, cassis. There's a little hint of herb de Provence, not an herbal note, but more like fennel, thyme, lavender, all those fun herbs that you get when you buy herb de Provence.
Dried herbs.
Dried herbs.
Yeah.
Right. And on the palate, that's where you find the bottle bouquet. It's really soft and supple with, I taste a little steak tartare and Picholine olives. And then to me, the best part is the long bittersweet chocolate finish. Key to tasting is just remembering what it reminds you of. So if you've never had a Picholine olive, think, what olive it might smell or taste like. Or if you don't eat steak tartare, but you have, ribeye, so whatever it reminds you of.
And annually, we do what we call a vertical tasting of all of our wines. Usually we go back 8 vintages with the Chardonnay and about 16 or 18 vintages with the red wine, especially the Cabernet. And we do that for a couple of reasons. One is we really want to see how the wines are developing, because we pride ourselves on making wines that are lovely upon release, but actually we feel benefit from additional aging. Of course, everybody's tastes are different, and if you like your wines younger and fresher and fruitier, by all means, that's when you should enjoy them. Personally, we like them when there's a little bit more age on them. But we're going to show you a little video here of our most recent Cabernet vertical tasting, and the notes from that tasting have been posted to our website. That's the other reason we like to do this, because often patrons will ask, I just found a bottle of 2004 Cabernet in my cellar. Any idea if it's still any good? What's it going to taste like? And so people can refer back to our notes and see what our most recent comments are. And again, we do this annually, so those notes are refreshed each year.
Don't go look right now, because I've just consolidated the notes and I haven't sent them off to Kate to post on the website. So
Okay.
not quite yet. Next week, I'll get on it.
We are going to be doing a vertical tasting today of our Cabernet. And a vertical tasting is a tasting where you taste multiple consecutive vintages of the same wine. And today we'll be tasting 16 vintages of our Cabernet, starting with the year 2003. The reason we do this, these vertical tastings each year for each of our wines is it allows us to see how the wines are developing. Also, we can check on vintage variation. And then during this process, we'll also write notes, how we describe, how we assess the wines. And those notes will then be put on our website, so that if you find a bottle of older wine in your cellar that has been there for a little while and you'd like to see how we have assessed that wine recently, you can go to our website and check out our notes. And when we're doing critical tastings like this, we like to minimize the distractions so we can focus on the process at hand, which means we like to be in a quiet environment. So we're not going to be tasting here at the winery where phones are often ringing, but we'll go up to our house and taste the wines there where it's nice and quiet. And today we'll be tasting with Kate, Scott, Sarah, our assistant winemaker, Ricardo, and although not today, but often, David, our vineyard manager, will join us. But if you follow me, we'll head up to our house and get set up for the vertical tasting. When we're doing vertical tastings, we generally tend to taste from the oldest wine to the youngest wine, which is particularly important when tasting red wines because the older red wines are softer, less tannic, and fatigue your palate more slowly. Tasting, we start by smelling the wine, and to do that, we like to swirl the glass because that volatilizes the wine and strengthens the aroma, so it's easier to assess the wine. And then we follow that by tasting the wine. When we taste wines, we generally tend to look at how the wine feels on the entry, the tartness, the balance. We look at flavors, hoping they'll mirror what we caught in the nose, and then the length of the finish. We just completed our tasting of 16 consecutive vintages of Hafner Cabernet, starting with the 2003. And now we're going to discuss each vintage and how we perceive them. Okay. 2012. Keep moving. To me, the aromatics are red dark fruit. I get strawberries and blueberries. Good weight on the entry, a little menthol and some dark chocolate in the finish.
Yeah, I had similar notes: violets, cassis, blackberries, chocolate. That was really round, bright, nice balance, and a dark chocolate finish. I liked it.
Yeah, I got steak tartare, violets, cassis, medium entry, nice weight, dark chocolate finish.
Yeah, I like the mouth a lot on this one. I thought it was really balanced, some fruit, really nice, but especially I thought it had it was really balanced throughout, so I loved it.
Similar comments. I just thought it was stronger in the mouth.
You know, the thing about wine is it's so subjective. You can't really say with any certainty, you know, this is the best wine, or these are too old, or these are too young. It's everybody's got their own preference, and that's kind of the beauty of it. And, you know, I think that looking at these, it gives you a pretty good idea of how our wine ages. And if we were to pick one in the younger realm, one in the middle, and one, you know, in the 17 to 20-year-old range, I think that would be a pretty good, or 15 to 20-year-old range, that would be an interesting tasting, and people could get a good idea. I think if you put, you know, 3 wines separated by 2 years each, the differences wouldn't be as noticeable as if you put 3 wines separated by 5 or 6 years each, and then you start.
I get it like all over the board, but you get those kind of people where say, I really like my wines really aged. I mean, not so much fruit, but you know, it's really soft and, you know, older characters. Acidity is still there, still very drinkable. And then I get some people saying, well, it has no fruit, much fruit characters to it. I don't care for that one. I like a little more fruit. And then there's another group of people who said I like more younger wines. So.
Can you say if you have a favorite? Do you think you have a favorite or two, or is it too hard to choose?
It's like choosing your children.
We
Which-
know Grace is your favorite. We've seen the videos, but I'll follow second favorite. So you can choose two.
I really like the 2007. I thought it was lovely. And I like the 13 in that flight and 13 in this flight.
And kind of with Sarah, this is my tattoo, the 07, I like the 09 and the 13. Yeah.
Not me. I got the 03, 06, the 09, 14, 16, 17, 18.
He likes all his children.
I like a lot of them.
Good.
Yeah, 2010 was one of my favorites on the first flight, and the 2014. And you?
Nice. Yeah, I really liked the 09 in the first flight and the 14 in the second. I'm super excited about the 17. Yeah. I mean, I think we're all across
All
the
over the
map.
board.
Yeah.
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 Now that the tasting's over, I suspect you realize how different people's tastes are. We all seem to have our favorites amongst those 16 vintages of Cabernet we tasted. Everybody's tastes are different, so for us, it's no surprise that we don't necessarily overlap that much. We hope you've enjoyed this sneak peek into our annual vertical tasting. We've never shared this with people before, but we thought it would be fun to show you how we do our vertical tasting, and hopefully you've learned something, so maybe in the future you'll put on your own vertical tasting.
And we're back. We're gonna taste the 2012 Cabernet now. Hope you enjoyed that little video of how we do our vertical tastings each year. I'll let Sarah describe this wine, the middle of the three wines we're tasting.
So for me, the 2012 is, it's 9 years old, which seems old, but it's surprisingly youthful. And I get really nice, bright fruit aromas of Bing cherries, red plums, strawberries, and cassis. And you know that it's a little bit older because it's beginning to develop a little bit of that bottle bouquet that was in the 07. And there are, for me, in the palate, I get flavors of India ink. For those of you that don't draw, I touch it on my tongue, so I know exactly what India ink tastes like, but also new leather, a little dark chocolate, and sweet vanilla with some toast. So I think it's really lovely right now. So
I agree.
as you enjoy the 2012, we're going to turn it over to Scott, who's going to give you a few tips on cellaring. So enjoy.
So you're 2/3 of the way through your tasting this afternoon, and Kate has we prepared a test, summer camp, summer session. If you're going to get the wine tasting merit badge, you have to work for this. So the question is, should wine bottles be stored on their side or upside down so that the wine is in contact with the cork? We're going to start easy here. So is that true or false? And I'm also curious, it looks like there's things going on. Oh my God. Totally smart group. Okay. No one's even playing the devil's advocate. Everybody knew it was true. Okay, so the second question is, there we go. With a library Cabernet, should you use a double-pronged corkscrew, which is also known as an osso, or also known as a butler's friend? We've actually had this, again, please jump in, true or false. We've had this conversation here often with patrons, and part of this is prompted by the fact that we release wines that are older than many other wineries. And in fact, during the holidays, the most popular gift item is always a gift pack that has a fairly recent Chardonnay in it, usually a 3-year-old Chardonnay. But the Cabernet that's in it has, for the past several years, been 10 years old, which is really unusual, very impressive. And we hear from patrons all the time that they love giving an older Cabernet. So great. So most people sort of agree with us that using a double-pronged corkscrew is very advantageous. You know, as you know, corks are a natural product, tree bark, and they get brittle with age. Sometimes they dry out. And the traditional corkscrew that goes down through the center of the corkscrew sometimes is not the best way to open an older vintage. And here, you know, Kate's employing questionable actors to help you learn here.
So we wanted to show you today how we open an older bottle of wine. This is a 2005 Cabernet, and we follow this method anytime we're opening a bottle of wine that, say, is 10 years or older. So the first thing we do is we clip off the top of the foil, but we use a corkscrew that's a double-pronged wine bottle opener, also known as an osso or butler's friend. It has 2 prongs. We put one down one side of the cork and the other down the other side, and then we just gently rock it back and forth. And the prongs go down in between the cork and the bottle. We get it all the way down like that. And then we twist it just a little bit in case the cork has become stuck to the bottle. It sort of breaks the seal. And then we twist it and pull out at the same time. Sometimes you have to go down again, and then you just keep twisting, pulling it out. There you see that nice Hafner cork on the side with the vintage date, and there you go.
And the third question is, you always want to decant an older wine, true or false? And remember, I told you that we're starting with easy questions. Oh, I can hear you discussing this in your living rooms. Very good. Parke is going to be very proud of you. False. Because we suggest that you don't decant an older bottle of wine, because decanting accelerates the aging process, and the wine is already old and well aged. We sometimes decant a younger Cabernet or a younger red wine because the aeration helps the wine to open up. The one exception is with large format bottles or bottles of Cabernet that have sediment in them. Sediment being the particulates that precipitate out and fall to the bottom of the bottle. And by decanting, you theoretically keep that sediment in the bottle and not in the carafe. So, so far you guys are doing really good on the tests. It's clearly a studious group. Great. Well, I'm going to turn it back over to Parke and Sarah, who will taste the 2016 with you.
Now, this is the most recent release, came out earlier this year. Quick out of the gate, so to speak, fresh out of the gate, although almost 5 years old already. So again, Sarah's gonna lead you through how we describe this wine.
You know, it's really interesting to think that we're saying that a 5-year-old wine seems young, but when you taste it in this flight, to me, the youth is quite obvious. It is really fruit driven with black fruits like blackberries, black plums, black cherries, and cassis, really dark, rich fruit. And those berry notes carry through to the palate. And on the palate, it's really a lively texture. It doesn't have the softness that the older wines had, but I think you can find some Niçoise olives, some fresh mint, a little cola, spice, nutmeg, black pepper, and of course that toasted bread that we look for. And I love the finish because it's, for me, it's bittersweet chocolate. So it's really, it's quite lovely.
Would certainly go better with food than just by itself, but quite tasty as well. So when we kind of look back at these three wines and how they compare to each other, often there are very similar descriptors year after year because the grape supply is unchanged, the winemaking style is unchanged, the staff unchanged. But hopefully when you taste these, you'll notice the differences that we talked about vis-a-vis bottle bouquet, softness, development, as opposed to this youthful wine that's got a lot more fruit intensity and less of that developed character. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, everybody's tastes are different when it comes to wine. Some people like them younger, some people like them older. The most important thing is to trust your judgment. And as Scott mentioned, we had some questions about the 98, the 04, the 05. Did you want to address that?
Well, you know, the 98 is obviously quite old, and when we tasted it recently, and to me, it has a lot of forest floor quality to it. It's a little more earthy, it's deeper. I believe somebody's tasting it today, so it'd be nice to hear what you say of it. And then the 04 and 05 are very similar to me, but they're more in line with the 07. You know, we get a lot of cedar cigar box as our wines age. That's classic older Hafner Cabernets, and a little leather too. And in terms of our favorite wines, we tasted these three wines at the vertical tasting, and my favorite was the 07. But when we tasted them a couple nights ago with my sister-in-law Betsy and Dick, my father-in-law, I really love the 12. So it depends on the day, what you're having, who you're with, everything's, you know, so it's never hard and fast, always the 07. For me, I love the 12 too.
Yeah, my preference today is the 2007. I generally tend to prefer older red wines, and today is no different. Scott, do you have a favorite? And Kate also put up a poll here to see what people prefer today.
I think my favorite today is the 2016. I love it a vintage that's really young, that's full of potential. Though I would be happy to drink any of these wines. And I'm glad that Sarah mentioned that your particular taste may change, you know, from day to day. It's part of the reason why wine tasting needs to be done frequently, because, you know, it's gonna be different every day.
Sales guy.
Sales guy, yeah. Parke's very happy with that around the 28th of each month. Oh, there we go. Age has privileges. Age has a lot of friends here. That's wonderful. And it's also a testimony to, you know, one of the things that we really enjoy doing is holding back wines that we can re-release later. We always have vertical collections available, whether they're for you. We also have them in smaller quantities as gifts. I think one of the most impressive gifts is the 3-bottle vertical of Cabernet that comes in a wooden box. And I always love it at Christmas time. We get a couple of orders from young men who are trying to impress potential future father-in-laws with that gift. It's kind of a slam dunk. So anyway, so the power behind the throne has just come into the studio here, the camp counselor for this summer, Kate.
Oh man, I never get a break here. This guy's always pulling my leg. Thank you for sharing some of your favorites, and thank you also for taking our sort of quiz, true or false questions. I like trying to mix it up and keep people on their toes. So we got a few questions through the Q&A, and what we thought we'd do is we'd start sort of a Q&A for the last 15 minutes. And we've gotten all sorts of questions before, from technical questions, ageability, to fun questions, you know, questions that might stump these guys. So just wait for it.
Parke gets the technical questions. I get the fun ones.
Okay, so let's see. So starting up, what, you know, we talked about, you did the little quiz about decanting wine. Someone was asking, what year would you start decanting and stop decanting? I'll throw in Cabernet.
Well, again, I would say there's no hard and fast rule on that. It's more up to your own taste. But generally, you know, we'll certainly decant the current release and maybe a couple of years after that. But you just have to kind of try the wine. And if you pour yourself a glass and it seems like it's not really very developed and you'd like a little more development, you know, pour it into a decanter. Just the action of doing that will give it a little oxygen. That'll accelerate the aging, the opening up of the wine. If it seems a little hard, it'll certainly soften the wine. But I would just rely on your own judgment to make that call.
And probably not decant after when a wine is 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah, yeah, and it may be even before that. It's personal preference.
Right. How long can we hold our Cabernets for?
Wow, this falls under the heading of personal preference again. You know, we enjoy our wines. We've been enjoying our Cabernets back 25, 30 years. They're different than obviously younger Cabernets. They don't have a lot of useful fruit anymore, but they have a lot more softness. Maybe they wouldn't stand up to a big spicy meal like a younger Cabernet would. I always kind of enjoy thinking about how young I was 25 years ago, and you know how young my daughters were back then when we made this wine. So to me, it's, you know, it's not just what's in the glass. It's also kind of what memories are triggered by drinking older wines.
And I think on the heels of that, it's also the people that you're around and like the vintage, like Dad was saying, you know, that always makes those bottles even more special. Someone was asking, let's see, the alcohol level in the 2012 was a bit lower than 07. And what's, you know, I guess there's a sort of a vintage to vintage variation, but was there a reason that 2012 was cooler or?
Whoa, wow. I'd have to look back at my notes, but as I mentioned earlier, we really pick on flavor. And in some years, you have hotter years. You might have a higher sugar by the time you get the developed flavors that you're looking for. Cool years, which is what we really like, tend to extend the growing season out and allow the flavors to mature a little more slowly, and hence the sugar to increase more slowly. We much prefer to have our wines around our red wines around 14 or even a little bit lower if possible, but California's climate, which tends to be warming, doesn't always accommodate those wishes. But as I said, flavor is really the most integral decision or quality we're looking for when we make a decision as to when we pick.
Let's see. Oh, jumping all over. I'm just going through.
Get one for Uncle Scott so he doesn't feel left out.
Okay. Let me see. So people sent in some questions beforehand. And one of the ones that I liked that we'll have Uncle Scott start with was, what is a memorable bottle of Hafner Cabernet that you've had and why?
So a few years ago, we celebrated our 50th anniversary, 5 years ago almost. Next year is our 55th anniversary of when Mom and Dad bought the property. So this was in 2017. And we wanted to celebrate all year long. So in January that year, we had a lunch in a non-insulated shop. We call it the shop. It's a warehouse, and it's old and it's original. So in January, we had lunch with the entire winery and vineyard crew. We had to rent these huge space heaters because it was freezing. And we brought out a double maybe a Jeroboam of our 1982 Cabernet. So it was our first vintage, and it was so special to share that with people, many people who had been working here for 20 or 30 or even 40 years, who had contributed to maybe not that vintage, but to successive vintages. And it was, boy, that was a memorable day. We're all huddled, wearing down vests in the freezing shed, eating this wonderful Mexican lunch from Agave in town, Mom and Dad. And that's really one of the things that's wonderful about sharing an older bottle with friends, is that it's an opportunity not only to reflect upon the time that's passed since that wine was made, but just also to create a new memory. So.
Okay. Let's see. So someone asked, are there any comments, and can you speak to the 2021 vintage?
Ooh, it's pretty early to say. It's been windy and warm and dry so far. It's hard to hard to guess what the quality will be like. We still have a lot of the growing season left. Crop size looks average, which is nice. Last year was pretty light crop. And so far, everything is good. No problems. So at this point in time, usually every year, we're pretty optimistic about how things are turning out. We'll just keep our fingers crossed that there are no wildfires this year around here or any other natural disasters or inclement weather like rain in the middle of harvest.
And we appreciate the optimism of the question, because we are counting on you to be here in 2026 when that's released and let us know what you think.
We had some questions about a specific vintage of 2002 Cabernet Magnums, but maybe you two could just talk about Magnums and the ageability of Cabernet in Magnums versus 750, the normal size bottles.
Sure. It's a good question, and I appreciate raising the issue of large format bottles, which we've done since day one. We bottle every Cabernet vintage in magnums and also in double magnums. We did used to make them an even larger bottle, just 6 of them for 6 family members, but the wine matures more slowly in a larger format bottle. So if you're looking at aging wine for a particularly long time, you might consider magnums or double magnums. And this has been an ongoing conversation that we've had with patrons. One of the things that's really dear to us is when patrons have purchased Cabernet from the birth year of their children, or more likely their grandchildren, because the grandparents always seem to have a little more disposable income for those kinds of things. We have several patrons who've bought wine in magnums, and then they serve it on their offspring's 21st birthday.
Yeah, and I've been the lucky beneficiary of that because Uncle Scott opened a bottle of, I'll disclose my age now, 1987 for a party before our wedding 7 years ago. So that's one of my most favorite memories. Let's see. How do we sell the other grapes that we have? Named vineyards.
How do we sell them?
Yeah, or let's see. I'm trying to, how are the grapes you sell to others used? And are they in any blends? Or maybe you can talk about just the relationships that we have with other wineries, since Dad mentioned we sell about half of the fruit in a given year or so.
Yeah. So we are selling grapes to various wineries each year, and some of those are long-term customers, and some of them change each year. Some of those people actually have put Hafner Vineyard appellation on the bottle if our grapes go, if only our grapes go into that wine. But it's a great opportunity for us to, the advantage of having more grapes than you need is that you can pretty much guarantee how much wine you're going to make, and then you sell the excess. And we farm every block as if it's coming into our winery. And I think our winery customers understand that and appreciate that. We're not farming for quantity. It's all about farming for quality around here.
There's also two other small details. Selling grapes is hard work, and Parke does it all. And unlike wine, which you can age, you have a very clear deadline with grapes. Parke's got a little bit of gray hair that comes from a result of doing a great job of selling wine, selling grapes. The other thing is there is a particular benefit in our business model by us selling grapes and wine. Because if we have a challenging year in the vineyard, it's usually a strong year in the winery. If we're a little lean in the winery in terms of income, it's usually a good year in the vineyard. What does that mean to you? It's just one of the many reasons that our wine tends to be a much better value than our peers, small wineries that are using fruit grown on the estate, usually sell for quite a bit more. But value was always a concept that was really important since day one, particularly to the founders, mom and dad.
All right. So I think this should probably be the last question, and I got it in earlier this week. So thank you for planning ahead, and you'll understand why. The question was, if you were receiving a gift for Father's Day, what Hafner Vineyard gift would you want to receive? So I'll leave those in your guys' good hands.
Wow. Well, it could be the 2005 Cabernet Magnum. If that was a gift to a father who likes to entertain or have a lot of family members at his table, or if he doesn't want to share, he should just be really, really thirsty. But Magnum is always really fun because it's just celebratory and it invites a lot of excitement. I think also, you know, a vertical collection, whether it's 2 bottles or 3 bottles, I think it's very interesting, as you've experienced this afternoon, just to compare vintages and to find sort of what you like. So I wasn't entirely sure if this was a question from someone who was looking for a Father's Day gift to give, or maybe from a patron who's hoping that the people listening are going to give him a Father's Day gift. Who knows? I think that's it, unless there's any other parting comments. But we just want to thank you for taking the time this afternoon to be with us, to share a glass or 2 or 3 of Cabernet. And there's no greater compliment for us than the interest that you have in the work that's done here in the vineyard and in the winery. And so we thank you, we toast you, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week at the second class. Cheers. Cheers.